I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Well, this review has been a long time in coming, but it's finally here. You're looking at the ceramic Pepsi, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual GMT-Master II 116719 BLRO, the Bleu et Rouge. Now 40 millimeters in diameter in 18 karat white gold. You can buy it and fly it home on our website, watchyouwant.com. And if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Watch You Want Inc. Now you can see on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference. This is your classic 6-digit reference super case Rolex GMT-Master II. So it wears comfortably. 12.6 millimeters thick for a complicated watch is quite reasonable, especially one this robust and this substantial. The watch was the star of Basel World 2014 and caused an absolute sensation. The first use of red ceramic on a watch, the first use of red ceramic obviously on a Rolex, the rebirth of the Pepsi Bezel in the GMT Master II line. The watch was an instant superstar, but it's rarely seen. Due to a retail price of almost $40,000 and limited supply of this bicolor bezel, Rolex has kept the Pepsi exclusive to the white gold and produced precious few of them. Now you can see that the case, being 12.6 millimeters thick and 48 millimeters lug to lug, works well on a smaller wrist. It does wear larger than the 5-digit predecessor, but here if you look at it from overhead, you can see this direct overhead shot reveals just how well it works on a smaller wrist. Even if your wrist is as small as 15 centimeters, maybe even a bit smaller, you're going to have no trouble with the fit. Rolex wanted the watch to look bigger visually, but not necessarily wear impossibly large for those who were already devotees of the 5-digit reference 40s. But that's something that's essentially been a matter of fact since the 2005 debut of this case size. Let's talk a little bit about the bezel, because that's what defines this watch. That, of course, and white gold. You can see that the entire bezel, being blue and red, recalls the original Rolex GMT Master of 1954, the original Pan Am pilot's watch, developed between Rolex and Pan Am, back then as a serious professional tool watch. The GMT Master was the first watch to feature a bidirectional rotating 24-hour bezel and a 24-hour hand moving at half the speed of the local hour, so that pilots could use the bezel to calculate local time as they approached airports while keeping the 24-hour hand set to Greenwich Mean Time. Now, since the 1980s, the advent of the true dual time GMT, you can have the hour hand as well as the local hour hand set to different time zones, and you can use the bezel to calculate a third time zone instantaneously. But what's different about this one is that that bezel is now rendered in ceramic, and it's beautifully done. There's absolutely no blending or overlap between the red and the blue elements. Now, it takes 40 hours to create every Cerachrom bezel, but the Bleu Rouge actually takes a bit longer. Still platinum filled at all of the indices and the Arabic numerals. What starts out as an all blue bezel eventually becomes a red and blue bezel via an additional layer of deposition on top of the blue base. Now, it's both virtually as scratch resistant as sapphire, as are all of the Rolex Cerachrom bezels, and a high gloss polish, so it blends beautifully with the applied white gold of the indices and hands on the dial, as well as the black lacquer base of the dial itself. Now, the white gold bears mentioning because to the naked eye, at first it appears a little bit like stainless steel, but in person, not so much in photos or video, but in person, it does have a luster and a richness to it that's hard to describe. There's definitely something different going on here, and white gold from Rolex is a different breed. For one thing, they make it themselves. They own their own foundry, and they are one of the few watch manufacturers that can boast of this. But what really sets their white gold apart is the fact that when you scratch it, it's white through and through. A completely homogeneous blend. It's not that milky yellow that most brands call white gold and then mask and cover up with rhodium to make it look like this. No, this is the same color that you'll find at the core of any of these components, any of the links, the bracelet, or the case. So if you do scratch it, and let's face it, it's a sports watch, it's going to happen. You're not going to instantly see a clash in color. You're just going to have it refinished, and that'll be that. No disfigurement. That's the advantage of Rolex's white gold. It's homogeneous through and through. It's just another element that they make in-house. Likewise, the dial is done exclusively in-house. Now here, we return to the red GMT 24-hour hand, and it's nicely consistent with the red of the Cerachrom bezel. The color matching is excellent, and it adds a dash of color to the otherwise effectively two-tone dial. Now, the lacquer of the black is very nicely done. There's no crimping, no run, no orange peel, no graining. Rolex does an excellent black lacquer dial, and the reason that they are relatively rare is because they're relatively difficult to execute. Black lacquer, black enamel, shows every flaw. Very few companies attempt it. Rolex pulls off a beautiful one. Now, the case, beautifully made, extremely hefty in the hand. If it may deceive to the eye, as soon as it's on the wrist or in the hand, it immediately gives up its game. This is incredibly hefty, and short of a full platinum anniversary Daytona, this is one of the heaviest oyster case Rolex watches I have ever held. Very impressive, but just as impressive from a technical sense in terms of manufacturing tolerances and engineering excellence in the clasp. Part of the current generation of fully milled out Rolex clasps, it closes with precision. Likewise, it opens with a satisfying snick, and it features Rolex's signature 5mm tool-free adjustment Easy Link inside, so you can adjust it in or out 5mm without the intervention of a jeweler. Very useful. As I mentioned earlier, this is a sports watch used appropriately. There's a chance you might want to let out a little bit of slack as your wrist expands. And because Rolex makes the whole watch, what's inside counts. Now, I mentioned during the 1980s, Rolex started releasing the first of the true dual time zone GMT-Master IIs, and that's what really defines the Master II over the Master I, the independent 24-hour and local 12-hour hand. Here, we have Rolex caliber 3186, 50-hour power reserve, 4 Hz or 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is a COSC certified chronometer. And of course, because it is COSC certified both as a movement and as a cased up watch, you want to know that you can set it precisely to a reference time. So, you can actually pull the crown, and when the crown is pulled, you can independently set the hour hand. You can hack the balance so that the seconds hand stops, and if you like, you can set all of the time, minutes, hours, and 24-hour hand in sequence. So you have a great deal of control over the indications, but critically, because you can hack the balance, you can set it to a reference time, a local airport time, a reliable clock such as an atomic clock or a known accurate quartz watch. Moreover, with a full balance bridge and Rolex's Cerachrom blue handmade Breguet overcoil hairspring, you have shock resistance, anti-magnetism, thermal resistance to timing error, as well as resistance to positional timing error, regardless of how you wear the watch on your wrist or how it sits on your dresser at night. And as ever, because it is a Rolex Oyster perpetual movement, the perpetual part, the automatic winding, is bidirectional with Teflon reversing wheels for very smooth action on the wrist. Likewise, the watch is essentially, I don't want to say bulletproof, but Rolex watchmaking pretty much defines the limits of mechanical watch durability and reliability today. Not only is this watch running COSC on our chronoscope, it's running far, far beyond, and because of the inherent quality of the movement, it's likely to remain that way for a good long time. Now, this is a historic watch in the Rolex catalog, not just the return of the Pepsi bezel, but the first ever use of a Cerachrom bezel with red accents. This is a watch that's going to be remembered. Some watches come and go in the Rolex catalog, but there are very few landmarks, very few milestones that we continue to talk about 20, 30, 40 years later. You've seen them in the past, you know them, Paul Newman Daytonas. You know them as the scarcely seen legends like the 5510, or the watches that truly changed the game like the original GMT Master, or the 1980s GMT Master II references. Well, this BLRO, the Bleu and Rouge, is destined to be one of those watches. It'll always be rare. In white gold, it'll always have a low take rate, but that rarity will work in your favor. There are a few easy calls in the collector's market regarding future desirability and collectability, but the new blue and red, the new Pepsi in Cerachrom is definitely one of them. You can fly home this pioneering pilot's watch on our website, watchyouwant.com.